welcome back. Today we're going to go back and revisit the AOC. This is a crayfish pattern designed a lot off of, kind of a tip of the hat to Kelly's Nancy P. Therefore the name fitting as well. I've since scaled this one down significantly for the rivers. If I'm fishing lakes, reservoirs, whatever, I'm still going to go with the full size one. It just seems with the current in the river, the scaled down version seems to perform a little bit better. It is a little heavy, but with the lakes and reservoirs, that added weight really lets it dive. So I scaled this one down. We're going to go into this one today. To start, let me get some of this junk out of the way here. We're going to go with our back hook, which is going to be an MFC 7050 size 6. I think on the original I did this one in a 2. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was a 2. I busted my hand off of something there. So it was a 2 or a 4, I can't remember. I'd have to go back and look at it. But I haven't tied many of them since. I have a few set off to the side in the off chance I do get to a lake or whatever it may be. I don't really fish still water that often. It's not my favorite, but no denying there's some massive fish in those lakes. It's just not quite my style. I prefer the rivers. So what we're going to do first is grab just a little bit of blue deer belly hair. And this is a spot, if you have deer hair that is junk or less than desirable for some of the more detailed work that's out there, this is a good spot to use it, because really I don't care what the shape is, I don't care what it looks like. All I want is a ball of belly hair back here to separate these legs even more. So I'm just going to go 1, 2. I'm going to give it a quick spin, make sure it locks into place, free this stuff up right here. There you go. We have a nice ball of deer hair. And then what I'm going to do is come in front of this, just kind of clean everything up a little bit, advance my thread to the front, get it out of the way. Then I'm just going to take a razor blade right through this. Like I said, no detail at all. I like to leave some of those fibers going back, like so. You can see these ones back here. I like to leave those in. A couple hairs there, and just didn't want to cut. Same thing, come on the underneath side, clear out the hook. Make sure the point of your hook is good and exposed. And then I'm just going to take these down pretty much flat on the sides. There we go. Just like that. Like I said, doesn't need to be pretty, doesn't need to be perfect. All I want is some added separation between these rabbit strips. So then we're going to jump right into them. On the full size version, I used mags. This one I'm going to be using just your regular 1/4 inch or your 1/8 inch rabbit strips. I'm going to cut a little notch into this for the tie-in point, like so. Bring my thread back and then get that tied in. I'm going to grab a little bit more there. There we go. That's better. We'll go ahead and get that tied in. Just nice loose wraps for now. It doesn't have to be anything too awful tight to lock that in. I'm not really worried about the length yet. I just want to get something cut off right there. Now I'm gonna settle the length up here in a little bit once I get both of them in. Same thing, I'm gonna notch the other side. Come to this side, get that tied in right in front of that deer hair that we have spun in. Just right in front of it. Spin my thread here slightly. There we go. Caught that hide really nice, everything's clean. And then just get some nice good wraps. Make sure that your legs are going down both sides. And then what I want is for these legs right here, or the pinchers, whatever it may be, I want them to end right at the bend of this arm on the Renzetti. That's pretty close right there. I'm just gonna take just a touch off of this. So I'm just gonna take my razor blade and take just a little section of that off. You can see right there, that's all the more I took off. And then when this comes around, my length is just about right. So then I'm just gonna even this up. Same thing, I'm gonna take my blade. I'm not pulling this hide so tight, I'm just keeping it straight. I have it loose, and then I'm just touching that hide with the blade until it cuts. So there we go, we have our nice even strips on this right here. Everything's nice and clean, everything's sitting how we want it. Now what we're gonna do is go into some Marabou, and we're gonna make some cover on this. A lot like how you see the October Tide. Yeah, the October's probably the one. It's definitely the one that started this style where I have them palmered but spaced out, and I added this to the AOC, and I really like the way that it performed. So all we're gonna do is set this into place. I want to get right in front of that slope a little bit from the rabbit strips, and I don't want this real apparent. I don't want it real heavy. All I want is just a little bit of coverage going back over those legs. So probably about 2 to 3 turns on this Marabou for it to be palmered. So there's 1, 2, and I'm gonna take a third right there, just enough to get a little bit of coverage, add a little bit of volume that'll blend back into those rabbit strips. But it's not so much to where when it's wet that it's going to take away from the movement that you get out of the rabbit strips. It's just adding a little bit of volume, a little bit of depth to the fly. Then we'll clean this up, get a couple of wraps right in front of there, and then we're going to go straight into our body, which is going to be a UV puller. I go back and forth on what I use on these olives. This is an olive brown UV puller. A lot of times I'll use the copper olive. I just like the way that stuff looks. And then if you want like a little orange tint or anything to this fly, which sometimes you'll see crayfish with the olive, they'll have some orange tint to it. That's a good application to use it. It gets pretty subtle, but it still gives him the impression that there's a little bit of orange in the fly. But for this one, we're just going to go with the straight olive brown. Take that, get it in our I didn't like how that first wrap went. I got distracted there. It looks alright. First wrap looked a little iffy, but it's good. Okay, I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep about 1/8 of an inch in front of that eye, and then I'm going to palmer another piece of Marabou. Once again, I'm going sparse on this. I'm going really light. I don't want it heavy at all. So then I'm just going to clean this up with some thread wraps. There we go. We've got a nice clean platform now to palmer these this other section or other plume for our back hook. A couple of those got in my way there. I didn't like how it was sitting. Remember again, when you're doing these, you want to keep these on the sparse side. Something that you're going to get 2 to 3 good turns. It's not real heavy, not real webby on your fibers. So pretty much opposite of what we typically look for when we're doing these palmered Marabou flies. So go ahead and get that tied into place, get that secure, some loose wraps, and then I'll go ahead and really clamp down on that. And I'm just going to take my blade here. Yeah, I thought I was going to. There we go. I just want to clear that out from the eye. We'll go ahead and half hitch, get this back in the cradle, and then we're going to take, like I said, 2 to 3 turns on this Marabou. There's 1, 2, and I'm going to leave that as it sits. I'm just going to take 2 on this one. I like the amount that I have there. It looks pretty good to me. I'm going to stay away from doing a 3rd wrap. Now I just want to preen these feathers back, get them into place, clean that up with a few thread wraps, and then we're going to go ahead and whip finish and our back hook's done. There we go. We've got some depth, we've got some volume built in that fly, but then these legs are still free in the back to get all the movement that you want out of this pattern. So I'm just going to take this now, touch this up with a little bit of olive, just to dull down that thread a little bit. Grab some wire. And we'll get our connection together here. I'm just going to go with 1 bead on this one. Let me see, one of these will work. That one's good. Just 1 bead on this, and I like it to be a little bit on the smaller side, so not as wide as you'll see some of these. And I've got some burrs and everything on there. May have to clean that up. There we go. There we go. We've got that nice and clear now. And like I said, just the 1 bead on there. I don't want a lot of distance on the connection. I want the back section to go more so up and down than I do side to side. So we'll explain how we'll get that effect here once we start tying this in. For our front hook on this, we're going to go with an Ahrex. This is a TP 650. And it's a size 2, so definitely scaled down from the 1 or 1/0 that we use on the bigger ones. And let me rotate this just slightly here. Oh, I can't find my Allen key. Yeah, it's around here somewhere. I'll just turn that slightly so it's a little bit better of an angle for that back camera. So to start, we're just going to get a thread base going down the bent section. And then we're going to put our eyes in. These are painted lead eyes, yellow, they're size small. Let me see here. I just need one of these out of here. So kind of rushing around this morning to put everything together, get a couple videos done. So I'm not quite as prepared as I would like to be, so I apologize for that, being a little disjointed here. We'll struggle through it, we'll get them taken care of. These videos will turn out just as half-assed as the rest of them, from some of the feedback that I get. Alright, so there we go. You can see we have our lead eyes going right at the start of that bend, right as it's starting to make its descent. I don't want it so far forward because I want to get a little bit of ram's wool in front of there. It's right at the bend of the hook, and this makes a really aggressive jig in the water. This thing really dives, especially when you start getting into like the large lead eyes and everything, and you've got the Magnum rabbit strips. That's when you're really going to notice a big difference on how fast this thing dives. But for the river situation, or for the river application, I should say, this is the one that I've preferred here as of late. It seems to do a little bit better for me. So these are the ones that are typically tied for the production. The ones that I'll keep in stock in the back. If you guys want, just shoot me an email. I can spin whatever size up on these for you guys. Had a couple that were ordered really big. They wanted them about 6 inches, so that was quite the crayfish. Believe it or not, we've got some up here like on Hebgen, and heck, even in Missouri there's some that I've seen. Those things are just massive, big as my hand. No wonder that trout eat so well up here. Alright, so like I was saying earlier, we want this back end to go more straight up and down than we do side to side. So in order to cut that side to side down, I want to take this and get this as close to my tie-in point as I can get, and I want as little of a gap back there as I can get. If I go too tight, it's going to wind up restricting the motion altogether. But there's a sweet spot. If you pull it good enough to where I'll take it out of the vise here, hopefully, if I remember once this is done, and you'll see it'll get that up and down motion more so than it will the side to side. And that's how we go about that right there. So there we go. We're going to take that, get that tied into place, and then just double our wires over as always once we get up to the front here. I got some glue on there, having them stick together. So just turn those around, double over the wire. Once again, bring that back to this side. Work with me there. And we've got everything nice and clean how we want it. I'm going to get this into our material clamp there, and then I want to cut off some of this right here. It's a little bit on the long side. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. Now we're going to go back to our Marabou. I want this one to be a little bit heavier, and all this is doing is creating some cover or a skirt, if you will, between the connection or between the two hooks at our connection point. I'll probably go 3 to 4 turns on this. I'm still not going with a heavy plume of Marabou though. I'm still not going with a heavy plume. Now I'm going to take this, tie it in. Like I said, 3 to 4, maybe 5. I'll eyeball it once I start spinning it around and see how I like it, see what I want out of it. But I don't have a hard and fast rule of, hey, there's 3 turns on this part, 4 on this. It's going to vary from feather to feather. So just look at, get used to what you like on this fly and then tailor it to that. So I've got 1, 2. I'm going to go 3. I'm going to take 4 in there. It's going to give me a little bit more bulk. Get out of there. A little bit more bulk, a little bit more material for my cover section right there. And then I'm going to get this out of the way. Peel all this stuff back. I still got a little bit of glue there. It's not quite dried. Caught on my finger. Like I said, I'm just peeling this back now, and I'm running this right to the point of this hook just to give me some nice coverage going back over that connection point. There we go. There you can see we've got good coverage right there between the two. You really can't tell a big difference. Minus that one feather that's trapped right there. There we go. That looks a little better. So now we're going to go back to our puller chenille and get this tied in, and we're going to take that almost to the bend of the hook. I want to take it right behind the bend, and then we're going to start working in our wool head. Pick that stuff out every 3 to 4 turns. Give that a good pull. Just stretch your material, anchor it into place. Now we're stopping right behind. Why that gap catches that thread every damn time. Stopping that right behind our lead eyes. Get that out of the way. Got some great Marabou that I'm using for production tie there. Get that out of the way. Had to stop production, go into filming today because I realized that I was out of videos. So we're gonna knock a couple out today. Alright, so before I go into the wool on this one, I want to talk a little bit about it. What you can do if you really want to, you can take and lay a piece of Marabou over the top. I used to palmer all of these sections in. What I mean by laying a piece over the top, you can kind of do like an overwing if you would like. Lay that in for a little bit of coverage. I really don't do it anymore on these smaller ones. On the bigger ones I will, just because there's so much space in between on the body right here. What winds up happening with this is the ram's wool winds up laying over and it gives you that overwing effect that you're after, and the Marabou kind of gets lost. So I really don't see a need to do that with these scaled down versions. Now the bigger ones, like I said, I still will throw an overwing in there. So I'm just going to clean this out. I want these tips just dusted off at the top, and I'm going to lay this back. That's about the length that I want for that. I'm going to wind up trimming some of it down, but that's close to the length that I want, and then I can just go ahead and knock some of that off so it's not in my way as much. I want to peel that back, go right in front of it, and then we're just going to go into building the rest of this head. So I'm going to take a couple of clumps off here. I'm just going to set them off to the side so I don't have to keep going back to it. Let's see here. There's going to be 1, 2. That'll be a bottom. 2 more should do. That'll be a bottom. This will be a top. Alright. So I just want to clean these out now. Just working this stuff out, making sure that I'm working with the best section of this. The stuff close to the hide is a little too wavy. This stuff at the tips is a little sparse, so I want to work right with this center bundle. And I'm going to go right underneath. Just sink that right in, right behind the eyes. 1, 2, pull down, and then really get a good tight wrap in there. I'm going to do a cover section, which if you've watched any of my Ram's Wool videos in the past, this is something that I always do on these. It gives me a little bit better coverage, and I like the way that it fills some gaps in and around the eyes. So I just take this in, I make a cone section, go right over the top, and I'm tying this right behind my eyes, pull down tight, 2, and then flip this stuff back over and catch it on the opposite side. It just gives a little bit more coverage. This stuff winds up meeting up with the stuff that we tie in. If you don't have that, there's potential for a little bit of a gap right there, depending on the quality of Ram's Wool that you're using. This stuff's pretty good, so we shouldn't have an issue, and probably didn't need to do that step on this smaller fly, but it's a habit that I've gotten into, so I do it on just about every one of them. Alright, that's going to be our top section. I want to put that one in last. I'm going to clean this out. This is going to be my bottom. There we go. So we're just going to tie this V in right on the underneath side, making sure that it's centered up on that bottom. 1, 2, pull down tight, and then right in front of that tie-in point, we're going to go with a V section right here. I don't know if I'm going to like how that one's setting. I'll see here in a minute. I don't know if I'm going to like how that's setting right there. So what I may do, yeah, there's going to be gaps and everything right there. So I'm going to add just a little bit right here. I thought this Ram's Wool was good, but not as good as I gave it credit for, I guess. So I'm just going to add a little section. I have plenty of space here. I just want to make sure that I'm not going to have any gaps in this head. That's one thing about Ram's Wool that'll drive me absolutely insane, seeing gaps in there. If you can see them when it's on the vise, you can bet your ass that when it gets in the water, those gaps are going to be really apparent. So usually if you've got good coverage when it's on the vise, you're in good shape. And I can already tell that I'm going to have gaps, so I'm just going to make another little cone section right there. I'm going to tie this in right at the eye and then fold that back over itself, and then that's going to really cover up any of those gaps that I was seeing there. There we go. That's going to look clean. Go ahead and whip finish this. 1, 2, get one last one in there. We'll whip finish that, get everything out of our way. We're going to grab a bodkin. Oh, where are you at? There we go. I just want to clean this stuff up. Untangle any fibers that we have in there. And now we're going to go ahead and trim. All I want on this, when I start, I'm going to find the point of my hook, and I'm just making a vertical cut going right above that. Be mindful that you are working on a bent hook here. So take your time going through this, and just be mindful that it is on a downward angle for when you're making your shape out of this head. There we go. Things are starting to clean up for us. Now, typically on like the boogeyman or anything like that, when you're doing these heads, it's a flush cut on the bottom. I want this rounded a little bit to look like the back end of a crayfish. So I'm gonna round this off slightly. Just working through this real slow. I'm not making aggressive cuts or anything. I'm gonna pick this section up now that I have my front starting to work, and I'm just gonna round this off. Kind of like you'd be trimming a glow bug or something like that. Just to give me my shape that I want, my basic shape, and then I'll go back in here in a little bit and I'll really clean that thing up. I'll take it out of the vise and really clean it up. Working this head through here. Keeping my collar section, if you will, on the short side, just to where it's going back into my last piece of Palmered Marabou. So I want to make sure that I'm able to see the eyes on this, clear that out. Now I'm going to take this out of the vise, get a little bit more aggressive cutting against the grain on the wool here. And I just want to round this up a little bit more, taking some of that bulk that I have off of the fly. I just want this nice and rounded. I don't want it flat or anything. And then I'm going to kind of cut into the bent section of this hook just to round that out slightly. Turn this upside down, it'll be a little bit easier to get the rest of it. There we go. And then round off that section just a little bit. I had a little point right there. And for the most part, we're pretty good on this. I'm going to let this one sit. I'll fine tune it once the camera's off. Let me get that in the vise or in the clamp. It's such a dang small hook. Having a tough time finding it there. There we go. There we go. So now, I still have a little section right there of thread that I'm seeing and I'm not too happy with. And I'll get that cleaned up. So now, there we have the completed AOC. And like I said, on the bigger ones, if you want, you can take an overwing and throw this over the top. In between the ram's wool and this Palmered Marabou, it kind of gives you a little bit more coverage. On the smaller ones, I don't worry about it. I think I get enough coverage with that ram's wool. But we're going to give this one a quick spin, and that is the completed AOC. Like I said, again, for the rivers, this is the one that I go with. The lakes, reservoirs, whatever it may be, I'll go with the full size. I'll go with the, I'll really lengthen that out. But this one seems to perform a little bit better in the rivers, and it's a little bit easier to control. The fly is a little bit on the heavy side with the ram's wool and then with the rabbit. But if we've got a smaller head, we've got standard rabbit strips instead of the magnums. It's a lot lighter, a lot easier to cast repetitively, and it performs really well. So if you guys have questions or comments, leave them with me and I'll get back to you. Thanks as always, and we'll catch you on the next fly.